industry of real estate industry marketing when Levittown and Mar Vista and everything was established. Now, let's go into the gut. What was your initial impression? You know, go to any part of the documentary. What moved you? What was your feelings? What did you feel after watching this? And this is open free form. Just jump in. What did you feel? What hit you when you got through the last minute of this? And what was your impressions, initial and secondary? What was your impressions around?
How coordinated it was.
Hey, Braz, was this the movie we just watched?
Yes, I was trying to show it for people who didn't see it, but
okay, bet.
How coordinated it was. It seemed a little. I thought that the plan was a little haphazard, and reactionary, but in actuality, the plan for the ghetto, the plan to keep things essentially the way they are, was very I always knew it was intentional, but I just didn't realize how coordinated it was. So when you're watching from the GI Bill to the parts about, I know the zoning, I know the redlining, and I get all of that, but even how how blatant it was. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like it's not like a secret. You know how they say you hide something in a book or something like that? Mm-hmm. Stupid people won't find it. But it's so blatant and it's so obvious. I'm not surprised how effective it is, but just how blatant it is to where it seems like it should just be a bigger story to me. Because it's just so obvious. It's just so out in the open.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It was definitely ironic how many different structures are connected to do all of this, right? You got on the insurance side, you got them on the banking side, you get it on the person who's selling the house side, right? And then there's another one in there that I can't really think of, but there's so many different, what you would call arms, kind of, around all of this. It's not just like one department, it's like a network of stuff happening that keeps all of that stuff together. That was actually, I mean, I knew some of it, but I didn't know there was like 4 or 5 different arms doing all that. That's kind of surprising. And then you look at, who those arms are, you're talking about federal funding. That kind of disheartening. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say probably the most emotional part, if Hicks was asking about that, to me, was seeing all of those housing buildings demolished. That shit, it like struck a nerve. Like it actually, some of the things that you guys are talking about, to just see those buildings, and when they showed the last scene with all of them coming down at once like that, I mean, I don't know, that did something to me. But I'd probably have to say overall, that was my overall thing. The tentacles, just how intentional and how structured this shit was. I'd have to agree. That was the most shocking part.
Yes, sir.
And if I could add one more piece, right? One of the things that stuck out to me the most, and it's like I heard it before, but I didn't kind of make a correlation. That when the lady was saying how she felt like black people moving into her neighborhood would decrease the value, like that's in the 60s or something. That's like a black and white film. So like the people on the ground are even kind of like in on, no, we're trying to keep all the money. You know what I'm saying? It's not even just about the house. Like when you're talking about the property value, you're definitely talking about an even bigger issue rather than, what neighborhood you could just live in. Like that's that's kind of, revealing in itself, right? That even the people on the ground knew, at least to like maybe not directly, but they knew that their property would skyrocket and other properties wouldn't. Like that was that's a part of the plan. Like it wasn't just something that wound up happening. No, that's a part of the plan.
That's right.
But that was something too that came later on. The people using their homes as a means of wealth. That wasn't, that most of America didn't do that. With Levittown being the first suburb, and I think suburbs get mixed up sometimes with rural areas. It's not the same. A suburb is normally outside of a city. And Levittown is only about 25 miles outside of New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And it was white only. It was white only. It wasn't by word of mouth. That's literally how they built it. The developer, his name was what? Levitt. It was white only. So that was kind of the blueprint that went around the country for setting up suburbs. Maybe not the codified white only, but literally that's what happened. And those properties, the country, like I said, they weren't doing real estate like that. Land was something, but home ownership and value increasing to the way it does, excuse me. That's in that chart too. Home prices going up. That wasn't expected like that. These most people just wanted it to be segregated. And the American psyche told them home ownership, be segregated and have some kids and all that shit. The American dream, pretty much.
That ties into the last part when me and Brass was talking, and like I say, I hear shit and I think of rhymes. At the end, when he said a jungle is a variety, well, rainforest is a variety of different things thriving together. America transitioned to just cornfields, where it's just one species of plant, but nothing else can thrive within that environment. So that's basically saying what Hitler's saying, how they want to be segregated once it came to housing. They want a whole bunch of cornfields of one specific, quote unquote, species of plants instead of a thriving rainforest, which is the amalgamation of difference. And yeah.
Whoo! DQ. Let's go.
Yeah, that was good.
Let's get it, man. I like this class.
Who else want to talk about their initial reactions? Stu Peas, Mel, Fairmount.
Can I add something else real quick though?
Yes, sir.
Have y'all noticed have you noticed this is the most innocent racism I've ever seen on any show? The innocent. It's the innocence of racism. It's like they knew, but they didn't know. They kind of know what's going on, but they don't know what's going on. It was just like I apologize on myself, but it's kind of like it's like they know that it's a benefit, and it's like they kind of even know what's going on with the other people, but with the other people, they kind of like just, I don't know, bro. It's just it was very eerie to hear them talk about like, yeah, we just want them over there. we don't care. It's not like we want them to do bad. We don't want their lives to be difficult, but we definitely don't want them here. So wherever they gonna go, that's cool. But they just don't got to be here. And then when they started talking about rioting, and they were talking about the frustration that goes along when you know you cannot thrive. And then when they started talking about Baltimore, it explains a little bit more. Oh, my fault. And this is in my notes. I hate the hog, but just what's the name? The slow violence and the spectacular violence.
There you go.
I wish I would have known that term when in about 1,000 of the conversations that we've had.
Yep.
Because slow violence is actually worse than the violence that we talk about with the black on black crime and all of that. I love that term.
That's a great argument. That's a great argument.
Could you elaborate for people who didn't see the joint?
Well, the slow violence, he described it as the redlining, the zoning, the forcing people, like Chef said. It's the slow stuff. Like we focus on the spectacular shit, the murders, the this, that, and the other. But the illegal forcing people into these communities, the illegal making sure you shut off any opportunities to leave. The other stuff, the mass incarceration, all of that, all the slow stuff, the simmering, it's almost like a pot, right? The simmering. Because I went and looked it up, and that's actually slow and spectacular as a term. It's like a pot is simmering. You're stewing this pot, and you're never paying attention to the pot because it never boils over, right? So that's the redlining, the zoning, all the little stuff that they do to you every day that's illegal. And then when you do the spectacular violence, when a murder comes out, you pull it out, you highlight that. but you never highlight what's going on in this simmering pot. You never highlight the conditions that you're forcing these people to be into. So I loved how he did. I loved how he did that. That was brilliant to me.
The boiling frog analogy.
Yep.
What's his face? I always say that shit. It's crazy where I heard it from, but this back when I was on my Alex Jones shit, and he used to always say the boiling frog. How do you boil a frog? You just gradually let the water heat up. Yeah, you can't just you can't throw a frog in boiling water. He gonna jump the fuck out. You know what I'm saying? You gotta slowly do it, and that's what the fuck was going on.
Yeah, I hope we're talking about that part at some point, Mujasi, because to me, while we've been so focused on these other conversations about this, that, and the third, we never discussed that part of it. We're talking about the spectacular fireworks stuff, not just the regular everyday shit that eats at your soul.
Well, I already got fast forward to today, Assata Shakur passed, right? That just brings people in mind of militants, right? Militants see oppression as violence. Just like you guys are saying, slow violence is still violence. They look at it like violence. And it's sometimes, like Brass is saying, it doesn't register in our brain because sometimes you think you got the time to get out of the way. You got the time to get yourself right. You know, I'm doing great. Things ain't so bad here. But, you know, it takes a period of time before people recognize the damage that is done. So that's one thing I know, you know, definitely about militants. They look at any form of oppression as violence, and they react in kind.
Absolutely. And so we already y'all already unraveling this thing, and I had a question that was going to lead us there, but I might as well put it on the table now, and then I'll backtrack with some of the other questions. How does Nicole Anna Jones in the documentary make the argument that urban protests and property destruction is a visible outcry of these housing policies? I'm gonna ask that question again. Nicole Hannah Jones is in the documentary. She's a sister with the red hair breaking some stuff down. She makes the argument that urban protests and property destruction is actually a visible outcry of these housing policies. How does she make that argument? Talk about that.
Those people don't own anything. So even if they damage something, it's not theirs. Just because they you know, that you live in you shop at a store down the street, it's not yours. The person in the store don't own the store. The building you live in or your neighbors live in, the tenants don't own that property. You know?
Yeah, correct. It basically shows a microfied situation of we don't have a connection with our neighborhood, even though we're in the neighborhood. I think the example in the movie was they was in Baltimore, they burnt the CVS down. And I'm pretty sure nobody in that community owned that CVS. You know what I'm saying? But from the outsiders looking in, they're looking at it like they're burning their own community. This ain't my fucking community because we don't own anything. Excuse my language. We don't own anything. And so I can see that frustration and that internal battle that can be going on top of the compounded situations that we're talking about.
Excellent. Who else want to jump in on that?
Honestly, in this particular case, maybe you got something more from it. I mean, I liked her. Don't get me wrong. I kind of what was the feeling I was? Let me go to my notes. Give me a second.
So the question is, for those who just coming in, Nicole Hannah Jones is in the documentary. She makes the argument that urban protests and property destruction is a visible outcry of these housing policies. How is she making that connection? DQ you dropped it. Brass just put it down. But how is she making that connection? Do some people agree that there is no connection?
No. She definitely did that. I'm trying to say, good. Because some of this stuff I'll be talking the whole time, and then on top of that, I'm trying to drive at the same time. But I'm gonna flip the question to you if you don't mind.
What?
Not exactly what she said, but what did you think about what she said? That's my only question. I know you the teaching, but because you're a part of our conversations in the Discord, I'm kind of interested in what you thought about what she said, if that makes sense.
What I thought about what she said, for me, I took it as a confirmation in a more simplistic way on how I view it. That there are intentional things that this United States of America, this government has done to control the access of Black people, to prohibit them, to restrict them, and to center a social experience that would disadvantage them from being able to take advantage of the American dream. And so when you create a pot and boil it with oppressive conditions of people in that way, then it doesn't take much to light the flame of urban protests that looks, and oftentimes in CBS News is framed as rioting, but it's actually a political outcry. Cornel West was one of the courageous ones who at the time of the several different protest politics we've had in the last 15 years, where he's framed it as not rioting. He calls it insurrection. He calls it political protest. He calls it the voice of the voiceless that he's borrowed from King, that he ushered that in. And then because he can draw the connection like she did so simplistically, that there's a relationship between when systems are organized and arrayed to keep certain people at a disadvantage, they find power by destroying what they believe are manifestations of outside control. So it might be CVS, it might be the Kmart, it might be the Target. I'll bring it home. When Minneapolis went up in flames the other year, only thing Black folks who own businesses off of Lake Street had to do was just put a sign up. Most of them had relationships with people in the community. They just put a sign up and said Black owned. And none of those businesses, that corridor of 3 blocks was touched. None of them. Absolutely none. You had Iranians and Egyptians and certain Asian descendant people putting sign up saying Black owned and Black supported, just to immune themselves from it.
One drop rule. One drop rule.
One drop. That's all they did is one drop. They had a Black. Yeah, he works here, and so in that respect,
he works here.
The protest was political. Rioting is what white boys at the end of a soccer game. That's rioting. There's no political consciousness to that. They just destroying stuff because their team lost. But in what we see in the protests, and I'm gonna land here because I want to throw some questions out here from y'all, is that, and
then I want to do my thought. Go ahead.
Absolutely. When we see these insurrections happen in these public demonstrations across after these profile murders, it's very politically driven. It's not 100% formed, and you don't see organizings controlling it, but it's very politically driven. And that political consciousness that exists in that protest, whether destructive or destroying property, oftentimes is geared towards an imagination of what they perceive is an expression of oppressive institutions that's prohibiting people from having a voice. And in that, one of the main things that got burnt and destroyed was the police precinct during that insurrection. So I'll land there. Go ahead, Brother.
So all right, so I kind of want to see what you're gonna say. Like I said, I don't want to talk the whole class. I'm pretty sure everybody watched it. Maybe we could still watch it again because just in case people didn't. But I could talk the whole time. I don't want to do that. But my point with what she said, what I got from it was they're acting as though they're looking at the violence and the rioting as violence, right? But these are actually the signs of the system breaking down. So when you cage it or you frame it like you said in that way, that's where the slow violence and the spectacular violence, why it crystallizes so many things for me, because the riot is the spectacular violence as a reaction to the slow. So on the news, what you see is all these people out here acting crazy. They just loot. And remember, we was having a conversation about Katrina and all of that. Like, oh, they stealing TVs and stuff like that, right? During the middle of the flood. But in actuality, what's going on is you got the slow violence. You got the.
I just made the host for that. I was about to make the host for that.
Yeah, hold on, Logic.
Oh, I thought it was.
What's that?
In reality, the reason why, and this is what's important for me, is the reason why it's so hard to understand is because even Black people and white people, we don't look at what's going on in these inner cities as violence. There's a beautiful thing like what Hit said. When these people, it's not just an outcry, it's almost like self-defense. When you got the lead in the water, the underfunded schools, you forcing me into these areas, you got the slumlords. When we actually riot or when we actually tear this motherfucker down because it's one violent act or something, sets everything off, we're actually responding to the violence that's hitting us. It's just slow, so nobody can't see it. So you ever see them times where they be like angry Black man or angry Black woman, or they got like, this child is tripping out. I don't know why he's tripping out. So when we look at people like the Black Liberation Front with Assata Shakur, or we look at the Black Panthers, the reason why we look at them as violent, we don't even realize, like, bro, they're the ones that can actually see that all of this stuff that they doing to us, this is actual violence. Y'all just don't see it that way because it's slow. It's over time. It's something that is not going to be magnified. So it's made me look at all these riots different. It makes me now look at like when you watching somebody and they just mad as hell, right? It's the situation that they in, but it's actually portrayed as violence. And that's why, because then you flip it, and I'm gonna land my plane on Katrina. When these white people got guns and they're protecting the neighborhoods, and you can't cross this bridge and come into my neighborhood, and even white flight of leaving these neighborhoods. Nope. That's their form of violence. It's just framed as white flight, or it's just framed as we're protecting our neighborhood, this, that, and the other. That's why I love Ryan Coogler's documentary on Katrina, where he got those behind the scenes phone camera shots where the white people were saying, I'm gonna go out there and kill me a nigga today. I'm gonna get me at least one. Right. That's just another form of violence. So if you can kind of reframe your mind a little bit to see both as violence, it's just one is spectacular. Well, the riot is just a response. It's a response to the shit you're doing to us every day. Like to make me want to holler the way you do my life, like that line in that song.
Okay. Do you guys think it's an effective response?
Yes. Yes. Yes, but I don't know if Mujasi want to go there, but
that's a fair question. I like the question, bro. I want other people to chime in on that. Do y'all think the protests resistance that we see after these incidents as a result of this slow violence, is it an appropriate response? Is it an effective one? As fair as putting on the table, brother.
It's the oldest historical way for the masses to get the attention of the regime. Yeah. It's the longest way, the longest, most historical way, most effective way that the massive have got their attention and got their voices heard by whichever regime it is. So yeah, it works. Absolutely. Corey, remember the Boston Tea Party? Was that a riot? Was that violence? That was framed as something that shaped America. The Boston Tea Party, but it's no different. They were trying to fuck up the market, actually. Yeah. It was an insurrection, basically. No different.
And according to the video, right, just to go back to that, part of the home ownership and any segregation that benefited white people was also to pacify them. So you have a group of people that you're trying to pacify. So the other group that you don't pacify or meet their needs, it's obvious how these things are going to end up. There was no pacification for African Americans, and I think that's the myth that goes forward. There was always opportunity. There was always a way through. Yeah, maybe for a few, but for a group that was not it. And people think, well, what's the other group doing? They're being pacified. They're being told they're better. They're being given loans with insurance, and people are building businesses around maintaining these homes. And like whoever said that earlier, logic. Yeah, there's a bunch of pieces that go with that. A lot of people benefit, from neighborhoods and things like that. Two, their roads are getting fixed. They got decent municipalities. You can't get that in the project building. Again, like I said, Levittown's only 20 miles from the city, but it's a world away. It's 20 miles from Queens, but it's a world away. So, yeah, I think when you don't pacify people, that's what happens. You're going to end up getting violence.
Gotcha. Small. Hold on 1 second, Chef. I'm glad you're here. Small, you was about to say something?
Chef can go. Well, I'll just say it quick. I think I agree with what Hitch said, because it's not just when he said the piece about a GI was able to come home, and I think we said for $100 down, and what was it, like $90 a month or something, like and the person that you just fought beside didn't get that same opportunity. The neighborhood that he lives in, when there's a fire, they're putting holes in the damn hoses. It's not just the segregation, but the devaluing of what's the only other way to fight that? What is the only other way to fight that besides protest and violence? So that's all I want to say.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, Chef.
Yeah, good morning, brothers. I can agree with the situations that we're put in. I can even agree somewhat with the prodness or the simmering of things and all of that. But and then protest is one thing, but rioting is and destroying property. It also speaks to a level of like y'all said, frustration, but it also is a temper tantrum that you can look at like a kid would throw when they can't solve their problems, right? So in these communities, the problem solving should be our biggest issue. Even when we talk about housing and home ownership and controlling your community, I think those things are mainly the root. The cause of it is the power structure of America. I get that, but the endurance of it, or the persistence of it, is caused by those people that's affected by not solving the problem. I'm gonna keep hammering that. Because human beings are supposed to problem solve. I don't think if there's a pond that grew in your backyard that was causing a problem, you should be able to problem solve to drain that motherfucker. Like, after a while, you have to be able to solve the issues of your life, your family, and your community. I'm gonna go back on mute.
Okay. So
Thanks.
my brother Jeff proposed an interesting perspective for me to ask this question. We know by 1968 the Fair Housing Act was signed. And according to the documentary, it was not enforced, not only on the federal level, but did not make it down to the local and state level. How do Black folks who have experienced what we've established today as slow violence, how do they solve or find solutions or address that the discriminate housing policy and the conditions that's created from it when the federal government was reluctant to enforce it? How do the Negro, the Black, the colored, the African American family, from their positioning of being discriminated upon after World War II in terms of being able to take advantage of the housing policy, how do they 2 or 3 generations later today find ways to address that, even when the federal government failed to address it?
Maybe one avenue is kind of following the model that, Dr. King and those of the civil rights movement, laid down for us in terms of boycotting and peaceful protests.
Say more, Frere. Say more. Peaceful protests, how does that help the conditions of people who have been, subjected to unfair housing
that would
practices?
be insane. To peacefully protest.
Absolutely insane.
After they
Hold
pass
on,
the
y'all.
Fair
Hold
Housing
on.
Act.
Hold on.
After they pass the Fair Housing
Corey,
My bad,
hold
I
on.
did.
Yep. I'm gonna make sure Fair, because I kind of unpacked his question, his response a little bit more, and give him an opportunity to speak to it. Go ahead, Fair.
Yeah, I'm just looking in terms of history within Black people in this country, like what has been some of the most successful forms of affecting change. And I always think of the civil rights movement. So I think thinking about a minority group, I don't think violence or rioting in that sense to me is effective. And now maybe you guys can point me to some examples, and I'm just not too familiar with some in this country with Black Americans. But again, boycotting seemed to have been successful. Peaceful protests seemed to have been successful in getting the goal done, and not that it solved everything and it was perfect, but it definitely pushed the needle forward.
Nothing.
I wouldn't see why that wouldn't also be able to be applied, during these times.
Okay.
Are we all gonna be able to answer now?
Yep.
I think.
Hold on.
I think.
Here. So,
okay. Go ahead. My bad.
Corey wanted to respond to that idea. He disagrees with that idea. So go ahead, Corey.
I wanted to respond because I think that would be insane to peacefully protest after you peacefully protested to get the Fair Housing Act passed, right? And then they don't enforce it, right? So then at this point, we're gonna tear this bitch up. We're gonna cost you niggas some money. We're gonna hit America where it hurts the most. We're gonna hit them in the fucking bread basket. We're gonna hit them in the pockets. You see what I'm saying? We're gonna tear up Best Buy. We're gonna tear up Target. We're gonna tear up the goddamn jewelry store, the bank, because all them motherfuckers is getting what they supposed to get, right? So if we ain't getting what we supposed to get, ain't no motherfucker gonna get shit. How about that? Because keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is called insane. So if you done already peacefully protested to get the Fair Housing Act passed, right, and then they don't enforce it, what you gonna do? Go outside and peacefully protest again? That's crazy to me. Go ahead, y'all.
Tupac.
Hold on. I'm gonna go to Brass, and then I'm gonna come to hits. Go ahead, Brass.
So Tupac famously said, trying to get change in the United States is like you starving and you going down and you can see the room, right? They in the room, it's all the food and everybody in there eating, and they won't let you eat and this, that, and the other. So you go down the first day, and the first day you like, hey, would you let me in? They say, no, we're not gonna let you in. So you go back to your room. The next day you come down, they're not gonna let you in. You come down on the third day, remember you haven't eaten, your needs still haven't been met. I'm laughing. Your needs still haven't been met. So then now your tone changes a little bit. Like, look, mother, cursing this another, let me in this motherfucking room, this another. The fourth day, you come back down, they're still not letting you in. Now you start your bit of a protest. By the fifth, sixth day, you kick the motherfucking door in, pull out a gun, give me the fucking phone. We're not talking no more. So I want you to understand with these riots or these temper tantrums, like Chef said, remember, the peaceful protest usually leads up to the riots. See, like Freddie Gray, that particular protest, that riot, that started as a protest. They didn't start off burning things down and this, that, and the other. That's the end result. A lot of times is when they're just trying to riot. They were outside the courthouse asking, let's see this. We want some information, da, 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 da. And then they respond with violence, and then it escalates into something else, and then that's the spectacular to the slow. So it's not like we don't peacefully protest. We do. Most of these riots that you see, they end in a riot. They don't start off with somebody just going downtown throwing a brick in a window. So the peaceful protest becomes what you see as the slow violence becomes the spectacular violence that gets splashed across TV. They just don't show the peaceful protest. They don't show that stuff.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that, Brad. Appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. Hits. I'm gonna go to hits and then back up to Chef.
I think two things, right? One, that as per the movie, whatever happened after all of those steps that happened after World War come on, Lucas. World War II didn't allow for the creation of a black middle class. Mm-hmm. That's number one. Now, whether people want to be classified, and that goes back to what I think is first, you have to understand your situation or your group situation, how you got there and how other people got to where they were. So again, that myth that some people worked harder than us, they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, they're more committed, they're more dedicated. That not only puts their psyche in a better place, it puts us mentally in a worse place. So when that middle class is created, what it does is now they're classified again. They're able to get financial packages that benefit their whole class as a group, because that's how business works. It's not always on the individual level. Hey, stop it. It's not always on the individual level. It's based on class or grouping. If your group is known or known to not be able to afford certain loans, people in your group won't get them. If the group is known for having a home and a good job and they can afford to pay back stuff, they can get all this. Stop it. They can elevate themselves in society just based on what others in their groups have done. Us, it's on the negative side. It's on the negative side as a group because the majority of the group can't make it. So some of us are going to get put into that bucket. But yeah, just understanding what you're up against, number one. Number two, how you got there and how other people got where they're at, and that's it.
Phenomenal.
Not bad for
Brother Chef.
Yeah. So when Martin Luther King and them protested, right? They were they had a leadership, right, that could actually go in and actually put their grievances and negotiate with the city leaders and the business owners in committees and meetings. That's what was really taking place. So you create the atmosphere, right, for them to have to pull the leaders in to hear your complaints and sometimes your demands, right? And you start to get stuff done in that way, right? and then it's got to go to the local city council or whatever. Now, when you're talking about us destroying things in our community, and then you say it's not really our community because we don't own anything there, or we don't own most of the stuff there, but we live there, we benefit off of those things, right? So if you burn down a CVS, right, or a drugstore that caters to that community, right, you hurt that community. You just hurt the community because the power structure has no obligation, right? Because most of the time these places are private owned, right? So if that company or that private owner don't want to rebuild that back in that community, then that community is shit out of luck. So the old people that live in their community, in that community, and the sick people, how they gonna get their medicine? You dig what I'm saying? Like that shit ain't even, you know what I mean? And then if you're thinking about the people who don't have access to cars and different things like that. So think about the insurance. Be brief, Bubba. Be brief. Think about the insurance, right? Now, Baltimore was one of the cities that burnt during the 68 riots, right?
Yep.
Now, the insurance, when these white businesses was burnt down, they got their insurance money and they said, I never got to rebuild or go back. So all of that commerce, all of those things that was in the black, it's gone. It's gone. It ain't like it. I could see if the people had the capability of putting those same goods and services back into the community. Most of the time they don't. So I don't know. I'm going back on me.
Brother, like you're expounding on.
No, I'm at the end of it. I'm at the end of it. It's a joke.
Why do I always, every time this conversation happens, everybody always consider their own neighborhood? Why would you tear your own neighborhood up? No, that ain't what I'm talking about. I'm talking about going downtown and tearing that motherfucker up, right? Where hit them in, it ain't gonna hit them in their pockets to tear your neighborhood up. It will hit them in their pockets. You go down on Michigan Avenue and start tearing that motherfucker up. It'll hit them in their pockets. You shut down the bridge that leads to Michigan Avenue. You shut down Chicago. You shut down Chicago Avenue. That bridge that leads you to Michigan Avenue to the shopping and banking district in Chicago. Shut that motherfucker down. Why would you tear up the Osco drugs in your own neighborhood? That shit don't make no sense to me.
Exactly, Corey. Exactly.
Yeah. So that's what I'm talking about. Stopping that. Stop them trucks from coming down I-94, right? You shut down the Skyway, right, on I-94 on the Dan Ryan, right? You shut that bitch down. I bet they start talking.
So there's
when I have a grievance, I have a brotherhood, right? I'm in the union, right? So when them white boys got a grievance, bro, they don't talk about all the peacefulness, the letting motherfuckers spit on you and all the wild shit that black people need to do so that white folk can look at them like they peaceful, which they will never do. I don't give a damn how many times you lay down on the ground and let a white boy kick you in the fucking forehead 10 times, right? They're never gonna say that you're peaceful. So we can fuck that part of the game, right? And go ahead and because the white boys that I deal with, right? When Indiana was trying to be a right to work state, we went downtown to Indianapolis, a million of us, right? And we told them motherfuckers, at least I didn't, I was an apprentice, right? But them white boys told them motherfuckers, yo, we gonna tear this whole motherfucker up if y'all don't do what the fuck we want y'all to do. If y'all don't get y'all shit right in here. And guess what they did? So I'm just saying, like, I know what white folk do when they feel a grievance. They go down to the Capitol and do an insurrection on your ass and kill and choke out police and beat them to death with fire hydrants and shit. That's what white folk do, right? But us black folk, We want to talk to those very same people that do that type of shit. We want to come in with nice and peace and shit. When America ain't peaceful itself, period. America don't get nothing in the world through peace. You know what America do? They gonna come and talk and send their bank guys to you. And if they bank guys can't get across to you, they gonna drop some bombs on your motherfucking ass. So that's how shit get done here in America. But go ahead,
So,
y'all.
so do you guys think that you don't think the civil rights movement was effective?
Hold on, Fairmount. Let's reserve that question. I'm gonna write that down because I'm gonna come back to that. There's some operational pieces that Corey put on the table that relates us back to the documentary and some presumptions that the documentary may either affirm what Corey is saying or may challenge what Corey is saying. But one key thing that he said in his argument, his idea, is why would we tear up our own community? Why would we tear up our own community? From what the documentary is establishing in terms of the relationship between housing practices and the concentrated poverty that developed in projects in certain communities, do Black people view their community as their own community? What do we know from what the documentary established, and how does Black people perceive their community? Do Black people view their communities, as opposed to white people, do they view their community as their own community?
No, they don't have the same relationship because of low ownership, right? They don't have the same because, you know, so like here in Baltimore, you can go, you'll have 2 blocks of homeowners, and then you go over another 2 blocks, you can tell that they are renters, right? And then from block to block, you can tell by how the streets are manicured, and you dig what I'm saying? How the houses look, right? In the same neighborhood, you can tell the homeowner blocks and you can tell the people who are renting, right? And usually they don't occupy the same, you know, streets. I don't know how it happens like this, but it does.
Like here, it's the same way here.
Yeah, so in any situation, you can tell that the people who own their homes, right? The Black people that own their homes are going to take care of their homes. There's a place in Baltimore, right, that was once called Marble Hill, right? Where all of the houses, right, had stoops, but they were all made out of marble. And the people, the Black people, it was a Black community, they would wash their steps, right? Because they was white. Every Sunday, everybody would get outside and wash this. And my parents used to tell me about it. I think there's a documentary on it also, right? But these were all homeowners, right? And they took pride in that. They took pride in how, you know, to keep up on their property and their houses. So when you have people who don't feel ownership, they can have a different relationship with the property in that community. So I agree. I agree with that part. But you still, and that goes to this, is people in the projects, and I remember people in the projects say, it ain't where you live, is how you live. So it was people who lived in the projects who still took care of their project home because there was a certain amount of dignity in where you live at. So it's I don't know. I
don't think dignity pays the bills. I don't think pride pays no bills. I don't think you could show up to your city council and say, look, the front of my house is clean. How come we ain't got no new businesses here? How come the companies that are here or talk to your legislators to say, am I getting paid enough? The taxes are increasing. I don't think pride got nothing to do with that. I think it's separate. I understand what you're saying, but that's like a Band-Aid. Go ahead.
So we saying that if we don't own your home, you can't take pride in your community?
No,
so, I'm saying pride will only get you so far. It will only get you so far. If you go to a bank, now say that marble breaks in front of your house. Say you spring a leak and your plumbing goes bad, or your roof if you go to the bank, they're not going to come look at your house and go, okay, the stoop is clean. Let's give you that 20 grand for the roof. Let's give you that 18 grand to get that plumbing done. No, you're going to go in a basket of people. Some of it may be home ownership, but the other part is going to be your demographic. It's going to be your income. It's going to be a lot of things, other things going on in the neighborhood. So clean neighborhoods or undestroyed neighborhoods can still be poverty. And poverty is a form of violence. Period. Continuous poverty and oppression is a form of violence. And everybody has their own button. I don't know when my button is, right? I don't know. I'm glad. You know, we think we got an idea that's going to make somebody go, okay, they've had enough. They've had enough. Let's stop. And one thing about this country is there's all good measures collect data that lead up to something. And if we go back to the movie, we can see how we lead up to a lot of these neighborhoods being impoverished. These are not overnight. Holy shit, I didn't get what I want. Let's burn it down. No, there are things that lead up to this. Or that goes into that myth that we don't know better. We too dumb. We're animals. We're wild. We got mad and fucked shit up. No. Let's look at the lead up. And let's see what some of those actions really get done in the community by cleaning up. Cleaning up. And we ain't talking about the old folks. We ain't talking about the people who need their medicine, who can't work. The ones who are working can't make enough money. Because those are the ones that are sustaining the taxes in the community, the people who are working. And if they ain't making no money, or the plant closed down, or this job left, or this place downsized, I don't care how clean your stoop is.
I don't know.
You know, it's just something different. That's all.
I just reject the notion that because you poor, that you don't need to have any type of self-dignity or accountability.
Right.
You know, you should care about if there's, dog poop out on the street. Clean it up. You know, whether you own that property or not.
You're supposed to pick it up after yourself.
You know what I'm saying? Because
but that's separate.
I got people,
that's separate
I have
than the
family
damage.
members that I grew up around. I grew up in areas that were poor as well. But my family and the black folks that I knew, they took pride in terms of their homes. They didn't have a lot, but they took pride in what they had. So I just don't think you can excuse that behavior just because they don't have ownership in it.
I don't think you can directly attach it either, though, is what I'm saying. I think you're trying to directly attach that, and I think that's untrue. And two, I think it's unfair because you would have to say the same reason for other people. How come we don't ask, how come white people ain't burning down their shit? One, ain't nothing to burn down in the suburb except houses. Where the businesses at? In strip malls and all of that.
Yeah, you're talking about them, though.
No. Well, no, you're not. You're not. I'm just adding to it. That's all. Just a comparative measure. So we don't get that myth again that we're somehow worse than other people under the same circumstances.
So the idea that's on the table that's been explored is if a people don't feel like they have ties to the community that they've been regulated in, the question is if they protest in this way, does it equate that they don't have pride and dignity in the space that they do have? And that's the discussion between the ideas. Is that does the destructive way that we protest, does that equate to a group of people who's poor and don't have any dignity or don't even have pride in where they're at, while at the same time feeling like they don't have ownership of the residential community that they occupy? And so this is the idea that's exploring. Before I move on with the next question, does anybody who hasn't spoke want to speak to it? Stu Pease, Tony, DQ, Fetty, y'all want to throw anything on the table to throw your thoughts in on this?
My first thought is poverty is violence. I'm not so sure about that. I get the correlation, and of course, your rights are being infringed upon because your poverty is manufactured, and we can see that. But I don't know, because I'm almost like, am I saying all forms of control are violence? You know what I'm saying? I'm not so sure about that, but I get the correlation. I don't know. I guess I've been kind of wrestling with that in the background.
Okay. So let me throw this question on the table and see if the study group can unpack it more and see if it elaborates more with you. Why is it important to connect the policies of present day housing struggles to the past? Why is it important to connect these policies of housing practices to the present day struggle of housing struggles like gentrification, renting, foreclosure, homelessness? Like, why is it important to have that understanding why is it important to have that to connect it to what we see today? If that question makes sense, let me know if it doesn't make sense.
Say it one more time.
I mean, one clear benefit. I mean, you can go ahead and say it again.
You was about to respond, Head, so you want me to clarify?
Yeah, go ahead and clarify for everybody.
Clarify. Yeah.
Okay. So we see what happened to the World War II veteran right after the war, the black versus the white. We see the policies that went into place. We see the development of suburbs in first templates manifested in Levittown and Mar Vista. We saw policies from the federal level, state level, and local practices between bank and real estates create the opportunity for home ownership and investments for white veterans, for war veterans and their families. We see investment loans, suburbs, housing participation, ownership, and this middle class development. And then on the opposite end, we see Black folks denied of any veteran administrative assistance. We've seen them denied of homes. We've seen them regulated to impoverished communities in the cities. They were restricted and not been able to participate in home ownership opportunities in large masses. And we've seen a lot of the restricted opportunities of employment and participation regulate these same veterans and same communities and their families to projects and areas that became concentrated with a lot of mixed income. And the trajectories that was created in terms of those two pathways created what we see now and what some in a documentary argues the struggles of present day housing markets. They related a lot of the Black families and the white families who was able to survive or were victims of the bubble bust connected to these historical housing policies. And my question, which kind of my explanation explains it a little bit, but my question is why is it important to make that connection? Why is it important to see that connection between the two pathways and how it influences home ownership and participation today?
Right. We actually, when we reviewed Naeem Akbar, one of the pieces that kind of stuck out to me is in his writings, he kind of looked at the behavior of African Americans at times as acting out because of some identity crisis that we were going through, and that was causing us to behave outside our norms, right? So when you acknowledge all of these social pressures that cause some of these behaviors, it makes it very clear that that acting out is really self-defense, right? You properly align the behavior with the response that's actually happening. So that's why it would be super important to at least acknowledge that there's something more happening behind this behavior.
Good point. Who else want to respond to that?
Well, if people have personal questions, right, about their family, like we all should, the further back you go, if your family was doing well, how come, I'm sure a lot of younger people, teenagers, when you're in school, if your friends own a house and you don't own a house, or your grandmother didn't own a house or a car or have a good job, it's your psyche. So again, to understand why things are the way they are, instead of a simpler answer to say people don't want anything, you can see the trajectory of other people given opportunity benefit in a certain way. Now, whether we care about that socially, businesses do, governments do, they all care about that. There's a lot of money in that. when you can forecast that these, better communities are going to want be valued higher, want access to more money, larger homes. That's in the movie too, where now your house is not big enough. How do you get a bigger house? You don't make more money. Your house is not worth it. You get a bigger loan. So it puts you on a trajectory to have more and more and more and have access to more. One group. Another group, you're still stagnant and you have to find a way because that neighborhood is nicer. That's where the jobs are. The one thing you can't leave behind is your blackness, right? But you're trying to achieve from a different, your trajectory is different. And that a lot of people were catching up 20, 30 years later. 20, 30 years later. By then, the system is already designed to benefit, say, companies, banks, etc., things like that. So if you have a clear trajectory, it explains why your personal situation or your family's situation or your neighborhood situation is the way it is, but also why someone else's is the way it is too. Which to me, especially for young people, is important. That goes back to what Corey said. I got to work 10 times harder for half. Now you got an explanation. Because if they ask you why, the young person, and you tell them because you black and they white. Yeah, I think a lot of kids are smarter than that. Now you have some information and a planned, designed. This is not happenstance too. That's the other thing. This is and logic. It's from the movie. It's persistent poverty. Hold on. Let me find the right one. There was a quote in there about as violence, concentrated poverty, persistent poverty. So not just going through some hard times. And it's spread across a group too. So I think it's just that information we need, so we can see how a lot of us got here. How did we get here? How did our families get here?
Absolutely. Anybody else want to speak to this idea or question?
I just struggle with what that potentially means on why I see poverty. That's more where I'm fighting it, like not necessarily our specific circumstances, but like everywhere I've ever seen poverty, I'm not so sure. But I get the correlation, and for our particular group, just when I make it a idea, I'm not so sure. My opinion.
Okay, so let's ask a fundamental question: is home ownership in America wealth building? Let's start there. Is home ownership in America wealth building?
Of course it is.
Explain how.
Absolutely, it's
wealth builder and
the
number one
biggest foundation.
Hold on, just 1 second. Hold on. I'm a Brass. I'm gonna pick on you for a second. Explain how is home ownership wealth building?
It's home ownership has always been the American dream. That's why they said in the video, every single president for the past 30 years has put a focus on home building, because that's the American dream that they talk about. It's not this immigration thing that they always notice. They're talking about home ownership, buying a piece of the American dream. It's the only way that you could participate. It's the only way that an average person can work every single day and be worth in wealth $1 million. It's the conversation I have with Corey all the time. A person like Corey and his wife can go buy a house. Now, through their own means, they'll never become millionaires. They'll never become worth $1 million. But what they can do is purchase a piece of property. That piece of property can then take these two people who make $80,000+ a year. They could take their incomes and all their assets and then add this $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 asset. Or like in the 40s, you could take a $5,000 asset that's now in 2025 be worth $1.2 million. So it's the only way. I want y'all to understand something about real estate. I don't play games when it comes to money. Real estate is the main wealth driver in the United States of America. Y'all could talk about tech. Y'all could talk about whatever you want to. Real estate is the great divider. It's the best. It's how America does what it does. Pay attention to how the presidents talk. Pay attention to what they do. Pay attention to what causes these recessions that we speak so lightly about. So understand, it's the only way a person like you, me, or a person from the inner city, that same person that lived in that project, I'm gonna land my plane, that same person, because I gotta go back on mute for a while. The same person that lives in that project, talking about that, oh, you know, pride and dignity, you just get it done. But I know y'all didn't live in a project based on what I was hearing, but that's neither here nor there. The projects, those same people that lived in those projects, is the only way that a person making that amount of money living in those projects can still participate in the American dream, because they can possibly get into a house, and that house can eventually become $1 million that'll add to your wealth, i.e. you become a millionaire.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Corey, you was about to speak to that, and I see Anathema just came off of mute. But Corey, you was about to say something? Okay, so he probably busy. Go ahead, brother Anathema.
No, real quick. I was just saying, yeah, like home ownership is like the number one way to build wealth, and not only that, to pass down wealth, right? As why I noticed that immediately. Why most of my white friends was doing so much better than a lot of my black friends, because you know they own their parents' house right now. You know what I'm saying? And their parents' house is much more valuable than it was when their parents bought it. You see what I'm saying? So if their parents paid $100,000 for their house, that house is worth $500,000 right now.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So that's how you build and pass down wealth. Also, being married is a key to home ownership and passing down wealth. You know what I'm saying? People don't understand how much of a business decision being married is, but that's one of the keys to home ownership. But go ahead, y'all.
No, that's a good point, brother Anathema. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. With the home ownership, right, though, it's not just any home, because you can buy property in a place where industry runs away and it starts to get devalued, right? So it's not just real estate. There's a proper real estate investment. There's a strategy behind where you buy the property, what viable industries are nearby, the school zones and all of that, right? Even if they're going to gentrify or redevelop an area, that should be under consideration if you're looking for property and lower income. So it's not just real estate. So it's investing and using a strategy in other real estate. Because the parents could have passed you down a house from a community that is no longer viable too, and the house not worth nothing. And you go around America, you see a lot of that. So I'm just saying, you know, you got to be strategic with the real estate investment. It's not just real estate.
No, I just want to be clear, just to add a caveat to that. Everything doesn't have to always be strategic. I agree with what he's saying. In an ideal situation, it should be strategic. But if you have the opportunity to get into something, it's better than whatever you're currently doing. Ownership is always better than what you're currently doing, no matter where you buy, what you buy. Because if you're really trying to build your family, you want to look appealing to these credit services. You want to look appealing to these banks. If they know that you own something, trust and believe, no matter what it is, you be treated different. You're treated much differently than when you go in and they ask you that question about renting. Now, I know some people now it's the fashionable thing to rent, and I get it, right? Because of the inflation. So some of this makes sense depending on your situation. But in most cases, I would say almost 90 to 95% of cases, even if you don't plan to live there, if you have the opportunity to own something, if that show start and getting in the game, it's always the start. It's like you turn 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16. That's just how you keep going up and down. And most people are not anathema. Where I do agree with you, it's being strategic is more like the investment part. But I'm also talking about just the living part and what you're to begin to create a portfolio. In the beginning, you usually don't have enough money to be strategic. You got enough money to just participate.
Absolutely. So then my question is, Brother Anathema, you wanted to continue on with that or expand or?
I agree with what them saying. That's all. I just was agreeing.
Absolutely. So then my last question is this then. If we know home ownership is a wealth building agency for America, and if we know even the highest office within this land attempted to have always speak to a plan to increase home ownership, that's on one end. And if we know and we've accepted the basic premises of this documentary, establishing that a group of people were denied access and opportunity of ownership, starting from the Federal Housing Authority all the way down to the practices of local bankings and realtors. If we know that there was an existing structure that made an intentional, non-innocent effort to deny a group of people opportunity to participate in this wealth building strategy that will have a generational impact, then my question is are Black people affected, were affected, and still affected by systemic racism? Should I ask the question again?
No, you just read off the system. You
Right.
literally read off the system. So I guess somebody can deny that and say, but well, if the government, and this is something I wrote, I don't know if it was a direct quote or just I tried to write it while the movie is playing. The government invented redlining. Banks and agencies enforced it. Zoning is a form of racism. So we start getting all of these fancy words, right? $5 words from the government. From you have agencies that are developed, and they end up enforcing segregation and redlining. And then through zoning, you just maintain that people can't get insurance, people can't get mortgages, or at least a mortgage with a decent interest rate. Though that's not a personal thing, between you and two people. That's something between you and an agency. If you're not getting a subsidy, that was the big word right after after the war, maybe 10, 15 years after the war, subsidies, government subsidies.
That's right.
Which is basically what? A fancy way to say free money. It's not a loan. But when we put big $5 words on it, it sounds different. Oh, they got a subsidy. You want welfare. You want something for free. Oh, okay. They got a subsidy. You just want something for free. So no, you laid out the system part. I don't see how it can.
And the other piece is, just so we're being clear, the response to those temper tantrums that we were calling the responses to what was going on, those took place. The Fair Housing Act that we got from Lyndon Baines Johnson. I'm a little busy. I got to tap back in. Give me a second.
Okay. So, and I'm asking that question because I'm relating it back to now the conversations that we've had in the last couple of weeks, and seeing how the documentary inform us, whether it confirms what we're saying or it disagrees with what we're saying, our position. That there's sentiments of people, and it's beyond this discord. There's people who believe that the Black American is not affected by any type of systemic racism or intentional policy to deny them full participation and citizenship into the wealth building practices of America. There's people who argue that. And again, we elevated the conversation numerous times between whether we think what we see in the material conditions of Black people today is just our own doing, our own pathologies, and us not pulling ourselves up by the bootstrap, or is it a manifestation of practices that we seen laid out in the documentary? So my question is, if we look at the Black youth, Black father, the Black mother, the Black grandfather, grandparents, if we look at the Black individuals today and the institutions that support them, are they impacted by policies, practices, and the legacy of discrimination?
The short answer is yes.
Yes.
And I would return a question of what purpose does the young black man selling houses, what purpose does he have to the documentary?
So, okay, well, hold that question. I want to see if other people agree, disagree first, and then we're going to come to that question. DQ said,
I'm giving the Craig on Friday. Yes. Yes.
That's funny. I'm gonna have to say absolutely. It just kind of magnified it, brother Mujasi. I didn't quite know. I mean, I knew some of these things, but it really kind of tied it together to just see it all. The way she put the documentary together, there were some things that I learned. So my I would say there are things that we can do to mitigate it, but yes, there's absolutely systemic things that we faced, that people before us faced, that we're still, having to deal with now. And I do want to answer a Logic's question as far as the brother in the documentary that was selling houses, but I'll wait.
Okay. I'm gonna come back to Logic's question. Anathema. I seen Anathema come off the mute.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna agree. I was gonna say it's evident though by the fact that they create programs to try and mitigate or ameliorate that. So if you're creating a program where your program was effective, you're already acknowledging.
Logic, go on mute real quick, Logic. Go ahead and say that again.
I was saying, yeah, it's evident by the fact that they tried to create certain programs to ameliorate or mitigate the systemic racism. So that in itself acknowledges it. Whether the programs are effective, I'm not talking about the effectiveness of the program. I'm just
right.
Acknowledges that.
Great point.
So Anathema, you saying just the mere existence that there's sometimes county, state, and organizational organizations that come into existence to address and litigate the harm of systemic discrimination. You saying the fact that they exist shows that there's still impact today.
Yeah, Anathema, you killed it with that one, Anathema. That's just one of them. That's just one of them right there. Why didn't I think of that? This is one of them right there.
Yes, sir. Anybody else want to speak to that? Like, because I'm gonna pick on this question as we close, because that question went on for about hours. It went on for a couple of days, and it was part of the core source of some serious conflicting ideas between whether or not Black folks have agency and whether or not we are self-fulfilling our own inferiority thinking and framework, or if we are the result of a slow, violent regulation that's enacted by government systems, because a lot of us don't see it. But the documentary, at least in the housing industry, showed this direct linear connection. And so I'm curious on other people's thoughts and opinions. Like, in 2025, are Black people as a nation as a whole still impacted by infrastructural practices that impact our economic and wealth building agency? Are we still impacted?
Of course.
Hellified impact.
And I think it speaks to our place on the totem pole. Go ahead, Brass.
No, of course we are. You gotta remember something, just because something is not happening to you, that's like saying, you get beat up on Monday really bad by like 6 people. And then, hold on, I'll be back.
That's that violence. Hey, that's that violence, Brad.
It is.
That temper tantrum. Oh, hold on. I don't know how Brass didn't mention this to Chef because Brass likes talking with Chef. But it says, I thought it was in the video too. In 1910, racial codes and covenants were created in Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Did anybody see that?
Oh yes, yes. In
Okay, I
Baltimore.
was just why Brass didn't pull that out on pause on Chef.
Brass came in this morning talking shit about Baltimore. He was already.
Yeah. He had a bullet right there. I don't know what he was waiting on. Like, this is your fault.
Because I can't understand how anybody from Baltimore would speak about the conditions anywhere else on the planet.
Baltimore's a shithole.
Yeah. So my
off.
original point was, if you get beat up, let's say you get jumped by 5 or 6 people on Monday, it would be a stupid question to ask somebody. They say they beat you to within an inch of your life, and you in the hospital, fully bandaged. It would be within the most foolish question ever if I walked up to you and said, "Are you still feeling the effects of what happened to you on Monday?" Are those things you got to be ready to get back into the game and go to work? It just doesn't work that way.
Lamar Jackson not winning no Super Bowl either.
That's a good metaphor. I like that one. I like that. We could go so many directions. You could go a few different directions with that. Anathema, you was about to say something?
Yeah, in defense of Chef, I think what Chef is trying to say, though, in spite of all of that, we shouldn't resort to just a rage-filled rhetoric that how can I see it? That discourages us from competing and only want to see something fail and collapse. And we're in what we want to fail and collapse. And I think sometimes when you just focus on everything is against you, you get a defeatist attitude. You get a nihilistic outlook, and you only have rage left. And sometimes using rage to address issues of inferiority, it gets you nowhere. It prevents you from competing. And I think that's more the sentiment of what Chef was talking about. I don't think he necessarily denies systemic racism in that sense. But he's saying that people want to use it as an excuse, and we know all of this. And with all of this as fervent knowledge, we should move a certain way. Like, we should be more mindful as a community. We shouldn't be as wasteful. We shouldn't be as a lack of respect for our personal civic environment. You understand? Despite what they're doing to us. Because I don't think that just because you're poor, you have to be destructive.
Right. So then, Anathema, you bring up an interesting point. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Land your point.
You can continue. I don't want.
No, you bring up an interesting point to veer the question a little bit. And for those who just came in, Isonic, who else just came in? Slate. The question that we're closing out the study group with is, are Black people in 2025 today still impacted by systemic practices that denies us of our wealth building agency? And we're using the documentary as kind of like a jump off point to have that discussion, because the documentary drew the linear connection between practices of housing practices after World War II and its manifestation in slums and projects and housing practices even to this day. And it drew this connection between the structural practices can be metaphored as a slow violence that erupts into these spark violence in protest situations. But Anathema introduces a new idea and question on the table: is what is when we consider the locked in restriction that we experience from governmental agencies that oftentimes we don't have as much influence and control under, what is an appropriate, and this may be speaking to what Fair asked earlier, what is the most appropriate mobilizing, coordinating, organizing, or political position that we can stand to address infrastructural discrimination like this? What is the most appropriate organizing, mobilizing, organizational, or political actions or things we can do to address infrastructures that are designed like this? How do we do this? If it's not ripping, cutting water holes and burning stuff down, what is it?
Hold on, finish. If it's not working hard, if it's not burning stuff down, if it's not pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, if it's not complaining, if it's not working twice as hard to get half as much, if it's not, you have to add all of that, because that would leave out some of the things that we either are aware that we've done, right, or been accused of doing and accused of not doing. So if it's not the violent aspect, and if it's not the attempt at assimilation aspect, yeah, just add that part to the. Just want to add that to the question. What is the appropriate response to systematic oppression and etc.? Go ahead, my bad.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you, Brother Fair.
Yeah, I'm gonna repeat what I mentioned earlier. I would say the model that King and the Civil Rights Movement provided.
But to the point that Hit's just idea that he put on the table, we did do that, and yet we still experience the same outcome.
I know that was mentioned earlier, and I have raised the question. So do you guys think that the Civil Rights Movement wasn't successful, or that it didn't affect change?
It's a fair question. That's a Fairmont question.
I think for its time period, it had its main effect at that point, maybe a decade later, right? My answer to what Mujasi is asking is, we have to understand how the mechanisms that are keeping people in certain places are changing. It's not the same mechanism. What happened in like post World War II, immediately after that, affects, it set a lot of things in motion. Oh, Jesus Christ. Sorry about that. Cut it out. It set a lot of things in motion, but the maintenance of those things that is set in motion changes throughout time. That's what we have to understand. What changed? It's not the same thing as, oh, you can't get a house here. You know, maybe back then, oh, this is white only. That set up some things, but the mechanisms it created, they changed over time. That's what we have to understand. How are things changing? What's different about it?
Oh, I like that. I like that. Slade came off night.
Yeah, I was telling Brad about this article about this lady in Baltimore. 77-year-old woman. She wants to sell her home, but she can't, because there's 10, according to her in the news article, there's 10 to 12 drug dealers across the street from her house every day. So when she bought a guy to appraise her home so she can sell it, the guy told her, well, I don't know, because this area, and then, you know, you was telling me about the drug dealers that you have across the street, and I don't think we could sell a house. And this lady been trying to sell her house for months now. And the mayor for Baltimore, I think he's a young guy, if I'm correct, Brassen, correct me, but he went on the news to talk to one of the news reporters, and the news reporters brought the article up to him, and he said, oh, I don't read, I think it was the New York Times, or maybe it was some, I can't remember the name of the fucking company. I think it was the New York Times, but he told them, no, I don't read that. I don't read that, those articles, or I don't read that newspaper because they associate with Trump or something like that, he said, or something like that he mentioned about Trump, that they have an association with that paper. So that tells me it's the politicians, bro. We got to get politicians in here that's looking to help people actually get homes, because it's like some of these politicians, bro. It starts with them, I believe, bro. Starts with the politicians.
Absolutely.
If they can do what they're supposed to do, people will have the homes that they need. If they want to fight for the people, they got to fight for the people.
Yo, Reggie, I was going to bring up a similar point before you brought that in, because I was going to show the example. At one time, the projects was like a come up. Like people wanted to go live in the projects, and it was nice and manicured, and then suddenly the projects became a death zone. And is that is what I'm trying to express is just because certain incidents happen around you, there's systemic racism. Do you automatically have to become violent towards your neighbor? Do you automatically, like, is that an excuse to automatically develop a violent ghetto?
No.
Because it seems like, you know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the old people were terrorized by the drug era, and they sold
Right.
a lot of property and left. And then the drug dealer that brought out the property, they make a drug house.
Mm-hmm.
And we had communities where one block, just one house on the block, could terrorize a 5 mile radius.
Right.
And I think we're leaving that out of the conversation, and that's why I keep saying that just because you're poor, do you have to be destructive and inherently just violent?
So here's what I'm gonna leave with.
Can I add something to it too?
Yep.
Yeah,
Go
just
ahead.
real quickly, it sounds like there's like a little underlying message that we're kind of dancing around, not necessarily saying it directly, but it sounds like we're almost in one breath acknowledging that America will never be an equal society. Right? Like, once you kind of like lay out all the factors about, the oppression just moves from this to that, and it will constantly be moving. So like the underlying idea that would be America is never going to be just an equal society. So how would we just answer those questions moving forward with that, or am I missing? Am I summarizing what y'all are saying wrong?
Well, Logic, let me show you this. What I'm talking about, right? If you go look at the people doing Jim Crow, Reconstruction, civil rights, I don't see them as violent towards each other as we. Yes, they had crime going on and this and that, but I don't see sets and the type of violence we have towards each other. And they had more oppression than what we have now. We have this systemic effect idea, and we still are destructive, and we don't acknowledge it.
No, it's
Anathema.
not the violence per se, but Hits was laying out, all the barrier, not the barriers, but we talked about the barriers, and then he talked about things that we've attempted to use as solutions, right? So since you can map out, we tried voting, we tried being peaceful, we tried this, we tried that. So with that being said, you basically acknowledge that we've tried a little bit of everything, and yet we're still here in this particular position. Our relationship isn't changing, the way we would like for it to. So I'm saying, would another way to represent what you're saying would be that America will never be an equal society, right? So that goes along to your question, like what would be an appropriate response with that as a reality?
So anathema. What did you compare it to? Who did you compare it to? Like what group in your last idea?
What you mean, what group? Oh, I was saying
Yeah.
the older black people in
Oh,
our,
older black people.
yeah,
Gotcha.
like how their communities, you know what I mean? They still had, I don't know, they was dispossessed. They was dealing with our systemic racism and outright racism, but they didn't have this destructive capacity that we see in our communities, that we act like somehow we forget about it. And I'm saying, because I know people blame it on, well, the white man did this and systemic racism, like sort of caused you to be violent. That's why I put that post of Geppetto and Pinocchio, because that's how it starts to seem like eventually, if you black, you just being moved by this puppet hand. He can raise it up and make you a militant. He can raise it up and make you coon. He can raise it up and make you part of whatever. He can put it down and make you not a star, and you just being puppeted. That's how it sounds. And I'm like, no, this violence is not a puppetry. Where is our? Because I think that's the response. Is that it has to be something simple first. Like black
Gotcha.
people just look at black people with respect first, and then
Gotcha.
that's going to change to, okay, I'm gonna spend my money this way. I'm gonna be more concerned about the environment. There's no need to destroy the old lady wall with some fuck up writing. If she want a nice mural, then we can put a mural up here or whatever. You understand me? I say, like I think, and then we focus on these grandiose ideas when Gandhi beat the British Empire with a fucking screen and just making his own clothes and saying, fuck them. We ain't got no gun or nothing. We got more people, and we just gonna say fuck whatever they're dealing with. And
Okay.
I don't know. I notice America more being concerned with their narratives rather than their truths.
Hold on, just 1 second, because Anathema put a few ideas on the table, and I seen Fairmont and Hicks come off mute. So I want to give them an opportunity to respond to that before I close it out. I want to make sure I close this out quick. So Fairmont, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to actually ask Logic about his question, so I'll pause there.
Gotcha. I'm going to reserve that for the next piece. Hits, you wanted to respond to the ideas that Anathema put on the table?
Yeah, actually, that and I can put it probably in one thought for something Logic said and Anathema. That's not the majority of Black people, and to me, that old mechanism, right, that was started that we're inherently stupid, violent, beasts, monsters, that narrative, right, in current form, because the mechanism changed, right, is who controls media. I don't care who don't like it, who does like it, whatever. The narratives that get promoted and pushed support that negative myth that we are some sort of fucked up people inherently, right? So the new mechanism is how that's what's pushed forward when that's the minority of us. To me, that's crazy. It's the most popular part of us, but that's the minority part of us. That's that mechanism that changed over the year. And as far as Logic, yeah, it is. If someone shows you who they are, believe them. If the system now is, it can be painted as class, it can be painted as income level, where you live at in the country, your education level, whoever's doing the classifying and benefiting from it in certain manners, yeah, you're always going to happen and change. It's always going to be that. That's just, part of this country. Definitely.
Nice. So we're going
to fight.
I wanted to ask Logic a question, if I may.
Fairmont, I'm gonna encourage you to move that to the general chat, because I'm gonna close out the fire pit right now because I got to get going. But
yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fairmont. Thank you, brothers, for participating in the study group again. It was phenomenal. I know there was a lot more we could have to the study group again. So my closing question that I would throw for y'all, if y'all want to take this into the general chat room, is what are the adjacent variables that the housing practices over the last 3 generations have impacted? What are the adjacent variables that the housing practices have impacted in terms of looking at the Black life? And then the variables is that I'm exploring and asking is based off of what Anathema was trying to unpack, whether I agree or not, is that how does the historical and current housing practices affect Black education, affect Black employment, affect Black family making, affect Black institutions? How does the housing practices affect all of those other aspects and microsystems that impact Black people? How does the housing practices affect that? And I think that will help us get back and peel back some of those layers that was unfold. So once again,
I have one more question before you go, Mujasi. Next week, can we get some juice and some cookies or something up in here? We just showing up. It's almost lunch. It's right after breakfast. I
think so. I'm gonna have some juice and cookies for the food.
Bring some snacks up in this piece, man. Something. Come on, man.
The morning time is expensive, but appreciate y'all. Let me close down. I'm gonna close out with some music by DQ, and then hopefully y'all brothers will move into the next room and continue the conversation. Mad love to y'all, and once again, thank y'all for joining the Fire Pit Study Group. I'll see y'all soon.
Appreciate you, Mujasi.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thanks, bro.
Likewise. My music going. Bye. We're gonna close out with some DQ. As always.
Whoever don't participate gotta bring snacks, and I'm done. That's it. You gotta bring snacks.
Yeah, if Eddie got the cookies and juice next time, he ain't come off mute.
the hell, man? Tell me what